Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Today, we're going to talk a lot about Iran and Israel because, well, it's the hottest thing right now. And Tucker Carlson just released an interview slash kind of looked like a debate with Senator Ted Cruz. And meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg has somehow jumped into the ring of Iran conversation because she is claiming that being black in America is as bad or potentially even worse. I'll let you interpret the clip for yourself as being in Iran under the Islamic Republic as a woman who doesn't want to wear hijab or someone protesting the Islamic Republic. So first, we're going to talk about Whoopi Goldberg. Second, I'm going to clarify some misunderstandings that I see going around about the topic of Iran having nukes and things that Tulsi Gabbard said in March and Trump contradicting Tulsi Gabbard yesterday. And then we'll also talk more generally about U.S.'s relationship with Israel and the skepticism, the reasons why Israel is supported by the U.S., and the concerns about how that could go too far. But first, let's go check out this clip from The View from Whoopi Goldberg.
Let's not do the and it's slow.
But let's just remember too, the Iranians literally throw gay people off of buildings. They don't adhere to basic human rights.
Listen, here's the thing. Let's not do that, because if we start with that, we have been known in this country to tie gay folks to the car.
Where the Iranian regime is today in 2025 is nothing compared to the United States.
Hanging black people. So
it is not even the same. I couldn't step foot during this.
Wait. That's not what you mean to say. It is the same.
No, it's not. The year 2025 in the United States is nothing like if I step foot wearing this outfit in Toronto.
I'm sorry.
No, I can't have my hair showing. I can't wear a skirt. I can't have my arms out.
I'm telling you,
I literally said it was up to the Iranian people.
Yes,
it is up to them.
And that's why I am saying that it is the same. Murdering someone for their difference is not good, whoever does it. It's not good. So that's why I said you weren't saying what I heard was not what you meant.
I think it's very different to live in the United States in 2025 than it is to live in Iran.
Not if you're black.
Not for everybody.
Not if you're black.
Guys, don't go to Tehran. Do not anyone at the table should go to Tehran.
Let me tell you about being in this country. This is the greatest country in the world. But yeah, I know that. And we all know that. But every day we are worried. Do we have to be worried about our kids? Are our kids going to get shot because they're running through somebody's neighborhood? They are not big deals, and I don't mean to say they're not big deals to you, because that's not what I meant.
And they are not doing well there either. They are not doing well in Iran. They are not educated. They cannot property. They cannot leave things.
I'm talking about here.
Nobody wants to diminish the very real problems we have in this country. That is no one's intent. But I think it's important we remember there are places much darker than this country and people who deserve rights.
Not everybody feels that way. Not everybody feels that way. Listen, I'm sorry. When you think about the fact that we...
All right. Sorry, I tried to make it through the whole clip, but there's just so many things I want to provide perspective on and correct about what Whoopi is saying. So first, the other host, who I believe is Sunny Hostin, is alleging that in the year 2025, it is worse to live in Iran as a woman who doesn't want to wear a hijab than it is to be, well, Whoopi's comparing it, than it is to be a black person in America in the year 2025. So I think at the beginning of this conversation, they weren't actually even on the same page about what they're talking about, because Whoopi Goldberg is talking about like the 1960s and talking about, stuff that happened generations ago that was horrible, like gay people being tied to vehicles and being tortured, versus Sunny's talking about currently what it's like to live in Iran. So that's just a misunderstanding between the two. But then Whoopi just brings it too far by alleging that in any way being black in America is comparable to being a woman not wearing a hijab in Iran. Guys, I want to make it super clear. In the last few years, over 30,000 women have been arrested and in many cases tortured, beaten, killed, and raped for not wearing a hijab. Do you guys remember the protests that were going on in 2022? Yeah, after those protests, they continue to crack down on dissident women. They killed over 60 children who were protesting in defense of those women. That's what's going on in Iran in modernity. We're not talking about comparing this to slavery or the lynchings of Black people or all the horrible things that have been done in the past. We're talking about in the modern era, in the 2020s. These things are not at all the same. And I'm glad that Whoopi acknowledged that this is the greatest country on earth. I was like, wow, I did not expect to hear that from her. But for her to say, oh, well, people don't feel that it's better to be a Black person in America than it is to be a woman who doesn't want to wear a hijab in Iran, doesn't change the facts. I get that people feel the way that they feel, and that's something to address, because the way that people feel, it matters, but it doesn't change what the truth is. And moreover, to the extent that Black people are suffering in America, because yeah, there is a Black and white achievement gap. There are many situations where Black people feel unsafe. Well, it's not the same as dealing with a government that is literally arresting over 30,000 people for protesting the government, raping, killing, torturing, and beating them. And frankly, this is the controversial thing to say, but a lot of the Black suffering in America right now, not all of it, but a lot of it is Black people hurting other Black people. And why is that happening? Well, obviously the people who are hurting other people are responsible for what they do. And also the historic conditions that Black people, American Black people who went through slavery, went through hundreds of years ago, the impact of that is still playing out. There's still a lot of trauma. There's still a lot of healing that needs to happen in the Black community. Okay, so a lot of that is due to cultural dysfunction within the Black community. And yeah, are there differences between the achievements of Black and white people? Yeah, but a lot of the what we call systemic barriers, like laws and things like that, that excluded Black people, they're not there anymore. And what I see a lot of the time with Black leaders like Whoopi Goldberg is weaponizing the condition of Black Americans as a way of winning this sort of like victim Olympics that is not actually advancing Black people and actually ignoring the culpability that Black people also have for the current predicament of Black people. Again, this is to say nothing of the historical trauma that Black people in America have faced, of course. And that plays out. It does play out over generations, right? Like if your great-great-great-grandfather was a slave and he had very few resources, and then your great-great-grandfather was not a slave, he was a free person, but he didn't inherit anything, he didn't learn anything about how to succeed in society. Of course, that's going to have a ripple effect on your entire lineage. And I think many Black people who have slave lineage are recovering from that. And we see this trauma taking hold in the communities. But sorry, that is not the same thing as oppression. You know what oppression looks like? It looks like what I just said. It looks like a woman not wearing a hijab. In some cases, not even intentionally, by the way. Like it might be the hijab slipped. Someone from the government says, come with me, you're under arrest, rapes her, tortures her, beats her, kills her. That's a whole nother level of oppression. And when we get into this self-righteousness, or saying, well, I'm the most oppressed, we get so locked into our own perspective that we completely miss the bigger picture, which is that it is a better time to be Black in America than it ever has been. And there's no better place to be Black than America, in my personal opinion. So let's watch the rest of this clip.
We got the vote in 1965.
Okay, they don't have free and fair elections in Iran. It's not even the same universe.
They can't go out of their house. The women.
You know what? There's no way I can make you understand.
Let me try something. It's like try to reverse roles with a Black person in this country, let's say, because I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Just try to understand from their point of view. From that point of view, this country does not do them well. Does not go to them.
I completely acknowledge that.
And we shouldn't compare atrocities.
If you're talking about Iran, of course, is doing worse things. But relatively speaking, it feels bad.
Okay, but I think you know that Iran is significantly
I guess we're going to come back and talk.
I was in college when that
talk more
revolution took
about
place.
this.
And I know what happened.
Okay. And sorry, I think I misspoke. I think I said the lady's name is Sunny Hostin. I think the woman next to her is Sunny Hostin. I don't know the name of the host, so my bad on that. So what Whoopi's right about is, yeah, there are undesirable circumstances that some people in America experience, like Black people in America, for sure. And there are things about the Black experience that suck in America, for sure. Let's please not compare that to what's going on under the Islamic Republic in Iran. I think that's what the other woman was saying. She wasn't trying to invalidate the Black experience, but Whoopi was getting into a comparison, and the woman rightly said, hey, we're talking about like different, honestly, orders of magnitude. Okay, what's going on in the Islamic Republic is much closer to what Black people in America used to have to deal with under slavery. Not for all women, but for women who are dissident and don't want to wear a hijab, it's very different. To say nothing of a general level of oppression that many Iranians are hopeful that they'll be able to remove themselves from the yoke of if this regime changes. And that's not me endorsing a regime change. I'm just speaking descriptively about how I know many Iranians feel about what's going on in Iran. Many people in Iran do not feel like the government at all represents Iranian interests, and they feel like the Islamic Republic is something that has infested the Iranian government rather than supports the Iranian people. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Whoopi Goldberg thing real quick, not because it's the most important thing in the world, but just because I think it's very easy in America to get so fixated on the issues that we have here that we make them equivalent to the issues that exist elsewhere when there's a complete lack of proportionality. And often when I hear these kinds of arguments, like I hear it from people who I know are Gen Z, for example, I'll ask them a simple question. Well, where would you rather live? That right sizes the proportions real quick, right? Because I'm guessing Whoopi Goldberg would not want to live in Iran over America. Just straight up. I don't know how Iranians, what life is like for a Black person in Iran. I don't even know how many Black people there are. It's probably not very many. But I doubt Whoopi Goldberg's going to want to wear a hijab in Iran. And if she doesn't wear a hijab in Iran, I'm pretty sure she'd get treated in a way that would have her begging to come back to America. So that's all I want to say about that. Now, let's move on to the more serious topics, because this is just one of those things that, it goes viral on X and the next day you forget about it. Who cares what Whoopi Goldberg said about comparing Black people in America to Iranian women in Iran? Let's talk about something that is actually more important here, which is the question of, does Iran have nukes? Now, there's been some confusion online about Iran's nuclear program. Is a nuclear program civilian energy? Is it for weaponizing nukes? How close are they? The IDF, Israeli Defense Force, says one thing. The U.S. intelligence said different things. I want to first show you this clip from Tulsi Gabbard, because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the Islamic Republic does not have any nuclear weapons program, or at least our intelligence apparatus has no evidence of them having a nuclear weapons program. And a lot of people online have been pointing to the fact that Tulsi Gabbard said that. And then Donald Trump yesterday, or might have been the day before, said, I don't care what Tulsi said, they were about to get a nuke. But people are only seeing part of what Tulsi said, so I want to show you the full clip right now.
Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons.
This right here is why context is so important. Because what did Tulsi say at the beginning of the clip? She said that our U.S. intelligence has no evidence of Iran starting a nuclear weapons program. But what did she say at the end? she said that they have unprecedented levels of enriched uranium compared to any other civilian nuclear program. So why does that matter? Well, the Israeli Defense Forces said that their intelligence indicated that Iran had amassed enough enriched uranium to produce up to 15 nuclear weapons within days. And if you just listen to what Tulsi said at the beginning, it sounds like she's contradicting them, because she said that Iran has not started a nuclear weapons program. That said, she also said at the end of the clip, Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons. So if she's saying that they have an enriched uranium stockpile, that actually lines up with what the Israelis are saying, which is that Iran has enough uranium to make a nuclear weapon. Now, there might be disagreements on timelines for when those nuclear weapons could actually be produced, but what Tulsi said is actually compatible with what the IDF said. There might be a different assessment on how much enriched uranium there is. Maybe Tulsi wouldn't agree at the time, because it was in March, by the way, that they have enough to produce 15 nuclear weapons. But it's not true that Tulsi was saying that Iran is not on the path toward nuclear capability, because she actually said explicitly, yeah, what they have is unprecedented right now. So, as I noted, that was 3 months ago in March, and things can change really fast. Now, let's say that IDF is right about Iran having uranium that they've enriched to near weapons grade. Well, the counter argument to that would be, even if they had near weapons grade uranium, it would still take months to assemble a warhead or miniaturize their weapons so you can actually deploy the warhead on a missile, or delivery system integration, right? Like, you got to figure out how to make sure that you mount the warhead and it can deal with wind conditions. And there's all sorts of testing that you actually need to do once you actually have a nuke. You guys remember all of what was it, Kim Jong-il at the time? Was it Kim Jong-il or Kim Jong-un's missile testing, nuclear weapons testing? Yeah, it turns out that just having uranium does not mean that you have a bomb. There's several steps that you need to actually go through before you turn uranium into a bomb. And to the best of U.S. intelligence's knowledge, and from my understanding, IDF's intelligence, there had not been any nuclear weapons testing yet. So some people have been saying online that Iran was days away from having a nuclear weapon. And I would say, no, it doesn't look like they were days away from having a deliverable, functional nuclear weapon. At best, they were days away from crossing the threshold of having uranium that is sufficiently enriched to create a nuclear weapon. So let's look at this from IDF's perspective. Because let's say that they think, okay, they agree that they don't actually have a nuke, but they do have enough uranium to make a nuke. Why strike now as opposed to wait weeks or the months it would probably take to actually get to the point where you turn that uranium into a deployable weapon that can be used against Iran's enemies or the Islamic Republic enemies like Israel and the US? Well, remember, Israel is neighbors with Iran. So the red line that they have for taking action is very different than the US. They're not going to wait for a bomb to be assembled. They're probably going to attack when Iran has enough fissile material for a weapon, has the capability to go nuclear quickly and secretively, and could operate in underground sites where they could assemble a bomb secretively. So from IDF's perspective, I can see why they would want to strike before the US. Now, I don't think that that means that the US needs to strike, because I think the US should be focusing on America's interest primarily. And although Israel and America are largely aligned on Iran being a threat to both of us, we're not 100% aligned, right? Because we're not neighbors with Iran. So I know this sounds callous, but if Iran is able to create a nuclear weapon, well, they're going to be able to create a nuclear weapon that reaches Israel before it reaches America. So we're not on the same timeline. So I don't think that means we need to go to war. I'm just saying this so you understand from Israel's perspective, or rather the IDF's perspective, why they need to act. Because their logic is, I speculate, once Iran has the materials for a nuclear weapon, the weapon can be built underground, in secret, in weeks or less, and that can be very hard to access. So it's too late to act. And that's why they took action last week rather than waiting. They thought this is the last viable moment to set them back before it's out of reach. And why not wait for proof of weaponization in their case? Because they probably don't trust U.S. intelligence or the International Atomic Energy Agency's verification timelines over their own information, which again makes sense. Now, another thing I want to clarify here, because I see a lot of selective emphasis online. A lot of people have been pointing out correctly that Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying for the last 30 years that Iran is on the verge of getting a nuke. They also point out that he falsely said that Saddam Hussein and Iraq have weapons of mass destruction, and he named nukes as one of those weapons of mass destruction, as well as chemical weapons. And you guys don't need to rehash that whole story of the trillions of dollars spent, tens of thousands of lives lost, and America's reputation ruined because of our campaigns in the Middle East. That said, Netanyahu has also been right at times about nukes being hidden by adversaries, because in 2007, Israel struck Syria's covert nuclear reactor that was designed to make nuclear weapons before it became operational. So I can see how Netanyahu has been wrong and led the U.S. into situations that we should not and cannot afford to repeat again, especially with our massive deficit, our massive debt, and the country already hanging on by a thread when it comes to cultural cohesion. And that said, there is a plausible reality where, yeah, this guy has been wrong for 30 years, and eventually the broken clock was right, and Iran is on the verge of creating nuclear weapons. Now, a lot of people have been saying no war. Other people have been saying no nukes for Iran. What both of these sides have to acknowledge is we should aim for no war and no nukes, but we have to decide what the priority is. Is the priority that Iran does not get a nuke? Because if that's your number one priority, you have to be willing to go to war with Iran. Is the priority that we don't start a war with Iran? In that case, you need to be willing to allow Iran to have a nuke. There's no easy answer here. I actually think this is Trump's most difficult challenge yet. I think this is a real make or break moment for Trump, because he's the guy who said no new wars. And I think more importantly, he said no World War III. We got to avoid World War III. Now, Trump has made it clear that he doesn't want Iran to have nukes, and he's made it clear in more recent days that he believes they're too close to a nuke, and now it's time for military action, which I find scary. And in a moment of uncertainty, I even speculated maybe it's okay for Iran to have a nuke. I no longer believe that. Not that I really believed it, but I speculated. I don't believe it. Because if I look at Iran, people have questioned, well, why is Iran different than Israel having a nuke, or North Korea having a nuke, or China having a nuke, or even Pakistan having a nuke? Because Pakistan is a Muslim nation too, right? Well, the difference between all of these nations and Iran is that Iran is they're not just a competitor to the US. They're not just an adversary of the US. I wouldn't even say it's fair to just say they're an enemy of the US. They genuinely hate us. Genuinely. It's a genuine spiritual, theological commitment to the downfall of the West. And I do think there's a categorical difference between that and even a situation like North Korea, where you have maybe an unstable dictator who doesn't have some deep spiritual commitment to the downfall of the West, but is unpredictable, and we'd rather not have a nuke. So yeah, I would rather North Korea not have a nuke. And Pakistan, right, which is also Muslim, but they're not extremist Muslims, or at least not at the level that the Iranian theocracy, or some Iranians don't like it when you say that. So Islamic Republic is. It's categorically different. This is the same Islamic Republic that supports Hamas and supports Hezbollah and supports suicide bombers, people who would literally give their life to take our life. So it's different. And I don't want any war. Like, I want the outcome. I still hold out hope that we can find a peaceful solution to this. And at the end of the day, I think there's something to what Trump's logic, as I understand it to be, which is, hey, look, if these people get a nuke, they will want to use it on us. In fact, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction doesn't even apply here, because these people are even willing to be destroyed if it means destroying us. And we see that on a microcosm with suicide bombers, right? Like, they're literally willing to give their life to take down the West. That's how deep this animosity goes. So now the question is, well, when do you roll the iron dice of war? Do you roll the iron dice before Iran gets the nuke, or do you roll it after they get the nuke? Trump is choosing to roll the iron dice before they get the nuke. And this is one of those moments where it's like, look, fundamentally, it's one of those moments where I've become very aware. I'm just one of the little people on the ground. I can sit here giving you my opinions on it, but this is one of the reasons why you just have to trust Trump, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you view it. Because this is one of those situations where there's so much private information, there's so much gamesmanship, there's so many chess moves that it's very difficult for us on the outside to even assess, is Iran close to a nuke? And yes, the fact that Netanyahu has been consistently maybe wrong, maybe one could say that Israel's actions have actually delayed Iran from getting a nuke, but I think after 30 years, it's fair to say that he's been at least overzealous about his claims about Iran having a nuke. Like, at the end of the day, there's a real possibility that they're real close to having a nuke. And they've definitely been enriching their nuclear stockpile of uranium far beyond what's needed for civilian use. That's incontrovertible. So them getting to the point where they're close to a nuke is just a matter of time. And I would hear the argument that says, hey, look, well, you know, the way Israel has acted, or rather the Israeli government or Netanyahu has acted, has actually been pushing Iran toward getting a nuke. Because one could say, well, maybe Iran never wanted a nuclear weapon program, but the way that the Israeli government has continued to be combative with them has incentivized them to develop a nuclear weapons program as a deterrent. Right, that would be the steel man in the Islamic Republic's favor, and that may be true. It may be that they were pushed to the point of getting to the point where they're close to a nuclear weapon. And regardless, here we are right now in the year 2025, and if Iran is close to a nuke, that is not a situation that I think we can tolerate as America. So that's where I am at. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in it. And look, it's not fun to say either, because I don't want to go to war. And actually, I don't even want to say war, right? Like, I would hope there's different gradations of military action before the point that this needs to become all-out war. So you guys might have seen that in recent headlines, the Israeli government, Netanyahu, asked the U.S. to, some people were saying, join in the war. What I understand they were actually saying was use U.S. heavy ordnance to penetrate a nuclear facility that Israel's not able to penetrate themselves, which is not the same thing as, hey, please send us troops and let's declare war, and Congress, you should sign a war declaration. It's not the same thing. There are gradations of military action. And to be clear, even if we just supply bombs to Israel to drop on nuclear facilities in Iran, they could interpret that as an act of war, and this thing could spiral out of control really fast. My hope here is that Trump is nuanced in his approach. He has a proportionate response to Iran's potential nuclear weaponization, that he's coordinating with China and Russia on the back end so that they understand, hey, look, guys, you stay out of this. This is between us and Iran. Don't jump in on Iran's defense. We don't need a World War III. This is something that we can handle just by dealing with the Islamic Republic. That's what I hope is going on. And again, in moments like this, I mean, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to trust Trump. But this is one of those moments where Trump just has the wheel. And it's easy to say, hey, no war, no matter what. But it's harder to acknowledge a situation where Iran gets a nuke. And if they're going toward that situation, the question is, are you willing to allow that? I think a lot of this other stuff is relevant, but a distraction. The fact that Netanyahu has been consistently wrong about Iran being on the verge of getting a nuke and was wrong about Iraq is relevant. But it's also relevant that he was right about Syria trying to get a nuclear weapon. So, as usual, there's nuance here. And I try to not fence it, guys. Like, sometimes it takes me a while to arrive at my deepest convictions about a particular topic. It took me a while to get here, and I'm still open to being convinced, but I'm not on the fence. I'm saying I think that we should take military action to intervene. If Trump is correct, then it's going to save us a whole lot of headache in the future. And I really hope that we can do this while minimizing the chances this spins out into World War III, which I think is the biggest concern. And at the end of the day, if in 4 years what happened was there was conflict with Iran and it got close to a full-out war, but it didn't, and Iran didn't have nukes and America was safer, I would say that's mission accomplished. And look, given the track record that the U.S. has of intervening in the Middle East, I can see why many people are scared and are not confident in that outcome. But we also can't do this black and white thing where people who are saying no war are completely disregarding the possibility that Iran has a nuke and cherry picking things about how Netanyahu was wrong. And we also can't do this thing where the people who are saying that Iran has nukes and needs to be stopped from getting nukes are completely ignoring the possibility that this thing spins out into World War III. Because there's risk. That's what it's like to roll the iron dice of war. So let's do a little midway pause, because first I need to drink because my mouth is getting dry. And second, I just want to see what you guys are saying in the chat. But before that, let me do a brief plug for myself. So if you guys like how I think and you like the way that I communicate, I really recommend you get on my mailing list. It's absolutely free. And there I share my long form, nuanced thoughts on complicated issues like this one. Yesterday, I just shared long form thoughts on the LA anti-ICE demonstrations. I showed you my long form thoughts on it in video. I gave you my short form video thoughts. And I also wrote a whole essay on both what I think the left missed about the illegal immigration issue and what we need to do about it, and what I think the right has missed about it as well. And this is one of those things where I talk and I manage to offend everyone somehow, but hopefully those of you who are genuinely appreciative of open-mindedness, are not locked into tribalism, and are actually interested in having a sincere, good faith exploration of these topics, I recommend that you jump on my mailing list. And also, if you're a paid subscriber to my mailing list or paid subscriber on Instagram or X or YouTube, you also get access to the private Zoom hangouts that we do, where I go deeper with some of my unfiltered thoughts on these subjects. And we're going to be scheduling one pretty soon. So I highly recommend you jump on the list ASAP. And let me put the link to that. It's thatskaizen.substack.com. I just put in the link for the platforms. I can see it in the chat room. Some of you, I think, I'm not sure if Instagram, when I type links, you guys get it, but you might have to just go to thatskaizen.substack.com. Okay, let me read the chat, and then we'll get into some of the Ted Cruz versus Tucker Carlson stuff. After drinking water, while drinking water. Yeah, Annette G says of Whoopi Goldberg, she definitely wouldn't want to think of living in Iran or visiting Iran. I don't think she would want to do either of those things. And if she did, she would need to wear a hijab, as I understand it. So, yeah, I think a simple way to break down some of these conversations when people are lambasting America for all of our past sins is, okay, well, where else would you rather live? Because, yeah, we got our problems, and in my estimation, the problems, generally speaking, are a lot more preferable to the problems that people are facing under the Islamic Republic in Iran. Teresa said, how do I get on my mailing list? Hopefully that answered your question, but yeah, you can go to thatskaizen.substack.com. Jimmy says hello. Hello, Jimmy. Andy says hello. Oh, I like this comment from Justin. Nowadays, the economic situation you grow up in is more of a factor to your outlook on American life than race. But if the elites keep the races fighting, then they can keep all races down and poor. Race doesn't matter to 98% of people today. So why is it so much of a conversation? You know, I had an interesting conversation with a friend who he was active during the Occupy Wall Street movement. And he went in to some of the protests and he did interviews. And he made an interesting observation to me. He observed that Occupy Wall Street was one of these bipartisan movements where people on the right and the left were really upset about corporate elites getting bailouts. And it was actually one of those moments where people in the middle and lower class were unified in their opposition to being manipulated by elites. And then all of a sudden, the conversation shifted to gay rights and race stuff. And all of a sudden, after that, the middle and lower classes were divided again. And I honestly don't know if this stuff is intentional, but I do know this. Race is one of those things that, because of the nature of conversations like systemic racism, everyone has a different definition. It can't be objectively measured. And as a result, you never know how much of a problem it is. You never know what is gone. So you can continue to litigate it endlessly. You can continue to complain about systemic racism and oppression endlessly because no one knows where the goalpost is. So you can keep on moving it. It's a very dangerous thing. That's why I don't like conversations that get into stuff like systemic racism or anti-Semitism. It's not that these things aren't real. The problem is they're really hard to objectively define, and people tend to weaponize these concepts to shut down conversation or to justify their victimhood. And what it also does is it divides people endlessly. Because especially when we start saying things like, oh, well, you have an unconscious bias or you have a microaggression. Well, now you're doing mind reading on the other person. And if you're mind reading, you can do that infinitely. Even if racism didn't exist, you could always appeal to invisible racism that's always holding everyone down. So it's not that racism doesn't exist. It's not that there's not discrimination. It's not that there's not hatred. Of course there is in the world. But eventually, in order to advance as a society, you need to change your focus from, hey, what's going on in people's brains to, hey, what laws and systems are in place? Are these just laws and systems? And am I, as an individual, afforded enough opportunity to do the things that I want to do? Me, personally, I'm not speaking for all Black people. I do not feel like being Black has been a net disadvantage to my experience. I love being Black. There are actually times where being Black has actually played to my advantage. I went to Harvard. I might have gotten in partially due to affirmative action. I like to believe I would have gotten in no matter what. But I recognize that, yeah, they looked at me. They're like, this guy's smart. He has accomplishments. He's Black. It would be good for us to round out our student diversity with this guy. Right. And maybe there are other situations where that works to my benefit. Not necessarily explicitly, but even implicitly. So I got to take that with the bad, right? Because, yeah, I have been called the N-word. Sometimes I deal with racists online. But overall, I don't feel like this is holding me back in any substantive way. I feel like, look, everyone has a hand to play. I have cards that are advantageous. I have cards that are disadvantageous. I feel like I'm well equipped to play the cards in my hand to create the life that I want. And that's where I settle on these things. And is that to say that there are not historical traumas and that have produced current day inequalities? No, of course there are, right? Of course, if your ancestors had a better starting line than someone else's ancestors, of course you're going to be doing better. Just like if someone is a descendant of a line of billionaires and the Rockefellers, yeah, they're probably going to have an easier life than someone who is a descendant of an inner city Chicago family and didn't have a father around. And this is more about individual empowerment. What are you going to focus on? Are you going to keep on focusing on the reasons you can lose or focus on the reasons you can win? So that's what I have to say about that. Okay, I don't want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg anymore. So no more Whoopi comments. Let's talk about something important. AC Ballin says, look, I think Trump has a tough line to draw. 80% of Americans don't want Iran to have a nuke, and 60% of Americans don't want to get involved in Iran. Good news is Russia withdrew their support, meaning Iran basically has no leverage. I would love to hear more about that. When I looked it up earlier today, I did not find any evidence that Russia withdrew their support from Iran, but please, if you have more up-to-date or more credible information, please share it with me. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see Trump do. It's like, look, if we need to get militarily involved in Iran, make sure we're doing it while minimizing the chances of World War III. How does World War III happen? If Russia and China view our aggression in Iran as reason to clap back at us. That's how World War III happens. It probably doesn't happen because US attacked Russia or vice versa. It probably happens because of Ukraine or Iran or Taiwan. These are the actual flashpoints for World War III. So if Russia's like, yo, we don't want to go to war over Iran, great. That's the kind of air cover we need. And yeah, it's a tough situation. And I just want people to genuinely acknowledge it is tough. Because I see a lot of people online being extremely confident that they know exactly what's going on and focusing on, I've already talked about this with Netanyahu and his track record. So it gets exhausting. I mean, I would like to see a little more intellectual humility online because this is a genuinely difficult decision to make. But after thinking about it more, I think Trump is approaching this the right way. Let's see. AC Ballin says, but Kaizen, if Iran does get a nuke that reaches Israel, the assumption would be that they would create one that reached America. So why not cut the snake now? Yeah, I agree. That is the concern. And the concern is that they could do these things in secret, right? So the concern is that it's not like, oh, they launch a nuke that can only reach Israel and then they'd create a nuke that can reach America. The concern is you just don't know what's going on. I mean, look at Israel. Israel is strongly rumored to have nukes, but they refuse international inspection of their nuclear programs. So we don't know if they have nukes. We don't know how many nukes they have. We don't know how long ranging those nukes are. So why as America are we not concerned about that? Well, because for all my concerns and everyone's concerns about Israel's much more ideologically aligned, and they are an ally of the United States, and there are a lot of mutual natural advantages to our relationship with them. We do share intelligence with them. They are more aligned with us than a lot of the more Islamics. There's the Islamists, and then there's like Muslim countries in the Middle East. And yeah, there's a cultural resonance. There's a religious history. A lot of Christians in America feel close to Jewish people, right? So I think that's why our government's not as concerned about Israel having a nuke. I would say from an international perspective, it's not fair for Israel to have a nuke though. But they already had one. They probably had one for decades. But look at how little we know despite that. Imagine Iran being in this situation. Like it's Schrodinger's nuke, right? It's like we don't know what's in the box. We don't know how big the nuke is. We don't know how many of them there are. We don't know the capabilities of those nukes that they have. So rather than engage in Schrodinger's nuke, Trump's logic is let's just cut this thing off right now. And it makes sense to me. And this was one of those moments where I'm glad Trump is in charge and not me. All right, good comments today. I'm impressed by the level of thoughtfulness. You guys are doing great. Got smart people in my following. Stellar Echo says Iranian people are supporting both Israel and the US. They're grateful. Islam is, I think this person's saying Iran is neither an Islamic nation nor Arab. Islamists in Iran hate you, but the Iranian people don't. You know, this is actually a good opportunity to start talking about Iran, the regime that is ruling Iran right now. And it's a nice segue to talk about the conversation that Tucker Carlson had with Ted Cruz. So for those of you who don't know who Tucker Carlson is a journalist who used to be a talking head for Fox News. He had a big breakup with them. I think he was actually fired from Fox News. And he's come into prominence in recent years as a extremely influential independent journalist who is not afraid to interview anyone. So famously last year, he interviewed Putin and he was attacked a lot for it. A lot of people were upset that he even did an interview with Putin. I thought the guy's a journalist. He should be talking to everyone. And what I personally like about Tucker Carlson is that he feels very sincere. He feels very sincere about his concerns. He feels very much like he cares about America, and he's willing to ask people hard questions. And this clip of him in an interview with Ted Cruz, which is a U.S. senator from Texas, went viral recently. I want you to watch this.
I live in Iran, by the way. I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government. You're the one who don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump. You're the one who can't figure out if it was a good idea to kill General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
You don't believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really believe that...
We're carrying out military strikes today.
You said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive capacity.
No, we're not bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
Israel.
Israel.
High stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
Whew. That was a spicy clip, huh? So admittedly, I've not watched the whole interview yet. I watched about an hour 15. I'm definitely going to finish it after this broadcast because it was a really fascinating interview. Highly recommend you guys go watch for yourself rather than taking an interpretation from a clip that you saw online or my interpretation. That said, I want to talk about this clip because it even got me for a second. We are all susceptible to confirmation bias. Every single one of us. It's a part of human nature. There's an infinitude of data that we're all experiencing every day. In order to take that infinitude of data and focus on the finite amount of data that is important to your life and my life, we all need heuristics that we apply. Okay, we all have patterns that we look for. We all have beliefs that we navigate the world through. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But the problem is it creates a blind spot for all of us, and it results in confirmation bias, where we only start to look for things that confirm our existing belief. I'll be straight up with you. When I originally watched this clip, I felt that I think the U.S. has a history of failed interventions in the Middle East. I felt that this is just another pending failed operation in the Middle East. I felt Netanyahu has been wrong consistently on nukes in the Middle East. And I was just happy to see a journalist being confrontational with a politician about it. And then I actually posted in approval of what Tucker did. And I don't disapprove of what he did. I still approve of him being very direct with Ted Cruz here, but I deleted the post. And why did I delete the post? Because, well, I hadn't actually watched the interview yet. I didn't know the context. And now that I've actually watched the interview, yeah, Tucker Carlson got really confrontational and kind of condescending toward Ted Cruz at many points. He was cutting him off a lot. He was clearly agitated. There was a moment where I do think Ted Cruz did something unfair, which is kind of imply that Tucker Carlson hates Jewish people and is anti-Semitic. And Tucker Carlson took issue with that. And I think Tucker Carlson got a bit heated, and he got heated at Ted Cruz back, which I don't think is the kind of way that a journalist should comport themselves. Because I think it actually gets in the way of a sober discussion about the actual things that matter. And I think here it was a bit of a gotcha question, where the fact that Tucker Carlson knew off the top of his head how many people, down to like the singles place in the number, like not just the tens of millions. He was like 92 million. It's like, okay, bro, you prepared. You kind of came in wanting to ask that question. And I don't know, I don't want to mind read, but it seems like Tucker Carlson designed that question as a gotcha. So it's a bit of a bad faith way of engaging in a discussion with a person. And with that said, I found it troubling that Ted Cruz couldn't even directionally say how many people are in Iran. Because guess what? Before I watched that clip, I knew approximately how many people were in Iran. I actually would have guessed more like 80 million, not 90 million. which I think is like a reasonable guess in the ballpark, because I looked it up. And actually, why did I look it up and get 80 million? I should look that up. I should confirm. Why does Tucker have 92 and I have 80? But regardless, if I'm looking that up as someone who's not a lawmaker, who's not deciding where we send money, not deciding where we drop bombs, doesn't it seem a little strange to you that one of our elected leaders didn't have the basic curiosity to look up, I don't know, how big is Iran? How many people are we talking about? What would it look like to get involved there? If Israel is a country of 8 to 9 million people and they're attacking a nation that's 10 times its size, if there's going to be a serious operation here, how much heavy lifting does America have to do? I think that's a reasonable thing to be curious about. And although I'm not looking for all of our Congress people to understand trivia, and look, I've been in a debate before and it's televised. I know what it's like to it's a lot of pressure. So if you didn't remember the fact at the time, okay. But I also would have liked to see Ted, instead of getting combative back at Tucker, say, yeah, you know what? I don't know that fact. I can see why it would be useful to know that fact. I'll look it up, because if I am going to advocate for regime change, if I am going to advocate for dropping bombs in a country, it would be helpful to know how many people are going to be impacted. It would be helpful to know the scope of the operation. So look, I give a lot of latitude for people making mistakes and having human moments and not remembering things. I think we've created this really ugly culture of trying to catch people with gotchas on camera. But I'm more willing to give that latitude for mistakes if someone has an attitude of humility. And I didn't really see that from Ted Cruz. And again, he was kind of meeting Tucker with the same energy that Tucker was meeting him. And Tucker is a significant influencer. But at the end of the day, just like I said with Trump versus Elon, at the end of the day, Ted Cruz is an elected leader. His job is to stay in leadership, in composure, in calm, to stay elevated, even if the other person is not doing that. And I wish he had done that here. So that's my view on this. I do think it was a bit of a gotcha question. And I think that Ted Cruz handled the question could have been better. But that's actually not what bothers me the most. Because what bothered me more actually came out once the full interview came out. I want you to watch this clip about why Ted Cruz supports Israel. And we'll get into what supporting Israel means in a second.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Okay, guys. So another, he did it again, right? He's like, where is that? It's in Genesis. And it's like, all right, come on. It's like, maybe the guy can't quote chapter and verse where it says that Christians support the nation of Israel. And again, we'll get to what supporting the nation of Israel actually means in a second. But it's just not useful. Like, it doesn't really matter if he knows it's in Genesis or not. It's just not a... there's two ways to engage in conversation. You can either be constructive and focusing on connection and creating enough safety for both people to make mistakes, but it's okay because we're working together to try to get to the best solution. That's what people do when they're on the same team. And then there's conversations where you're focused on disconnection, conflict, trying to make the other person look stupid. And that's what it looked like Tucker was trying to do to Ted Cruz here. So it's like, come on, man. Does it really matter whether it's in Genesis or Deuteronomy or Revelations for that matter? It's not that important. I think it's even less relevant than the population of Iran, which I actually do think is relevant.
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel.
Okay, so I just want to address the chat real quick. This is fun, so keep it coming. You guys are making great comments today. So someone said, can't make a claim if you don't have the details, though. Okay, I mean, yeah, in theory, But people make claims all the time that if you press them for the chapter and verse of where what they said is coming from, they would not be able to cite it on the spot. Because this is a live environment. Like, I don't know how many of you have ever been on camera in a live debate or conversation or interview. You're going to make mistakes. And sometimes when you make a statement that's like a written statement, like, yeah, you do your research and you prepare, but having all of that information committed to fluid memory is much harder. So Tucker Carlson, I listen to Tucker Carlson's podcast. He regularly says stuff that I'm pretty sure if he was pressed, he would not be able to cite chapter and verse where it came from. And he'll say stuff like, obviously. It's like, well, it's actually not that obvious, so it'd be helpful if you explained it. So Tucker Carlson, he knows what it's like to be on camera. He knows what it's like to be pressed. He knows what it's like to say something wrong. It's a guy who's freely admitted that he wrongly supported the war in Iraq. It's okay. We can all have a little bit of compassion for one another's humanity and the fact that we make mistakes. Now, the better question is Ted Cruz sincere in his theological commitment to Christians supporting Jews and the state of Israel? I do think he's sincere. I think he's sincere even if he can't quote Genesis. Would it be better if he could quote Genesis? Of course it would be better. But I don't think the guy is lying. I think he genuinely believes that Christians who support the Jews will be blessed and those who don't support Israel will be cursed. I think he genuinely believes that. And Tucker says he genuinely believes him too. He thinks he's being sincere. So I think like that's where we should settle rather than this like constant gotcha game. It's like, look, most people, everyone watching this stream, all 8,000 of you right now, you all have things that you have said that if someone pressed you on the spot, you would not be able to cite your source. Okay, that's what it's like to be a normal person. Is it different to say it on an interview? Sure. But I don't think Ted Cruz was preparing for debate here. He wants to have a conversation with Tucker Carlson. So that's what I'll say. The reason I say this all is because I just want people to like soften in the way we have dialogue rather than always being like, it's like we're always on guard in a state of hypervigilance, waiting to attack someone or waiting to defend ourselves. And when people are in that kind of an agitated state, it's not a space where people can be creative and problem solving. And if you actually watch the interview, Ted Cruz, he came in with seemingly good intentions. Like, hey, he complimented Tucker Carlson. He said, I watched you during COVID. You're the person I listened to for a breath of fresh air. So the conversation could be cordial. And I think moments like this from Tucker just make it not cordial. All right, let's keep going.
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But what, hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected.
He's the prime minister.
Right.
What?
But just like, you know, America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle is there.
Okay. I'm going to stop here because there's just a lot to break down. So we're going to keep breaking down as we go through the clip. And also because we just got a really great comment from someone. CJ Wolf says, watch the Eric Weinstein lecture on hypervigilance as a product of hybrid warfare. We're being trained. I know who Eric Weinstein is. I haven't seen that particular lecture, so I can't comment on it. But then CJ Wolf said, rage creates engagement and clicks. You are correct. You are correct. Whether we're being trained and there's one big psyop to make everyone mad at each other so that we don't get anything done, and we're constantly jumping down each other's throats and calling each other stupid and getting divided on the basis of who we want to have sex with or what race we are. I don't know if it's trained. I don't know if it's intentional or it's just entropy, but we need to stop. Okay, guys, none of you, hopefully, in your families, in your relationship with friends, in conversations with people, are like in a state of hypervigilance, waiting to jump down someone's throat if they get the tiniest detail wrong. So why are we doing that in public discussions that are supposed to be between two people on the same team, right? As Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz both love America. So why is this becoming like some sort of dueling match when it doesn't really need to be? This is why I personally hate debates. I hate debates. I hate presidential debates. I think they're complete waste of time. I think it's just UFC for politics. I did a debate with Destiny. Some of you have seen it. I thought Destiny was the better debater. I've said that before. And frankly, I think debating is dumb. I think what we should actually be having is discussions between people with alternative views, and we should have a good faith exploration of the merits and demerits of the various views with a focus on elevating discussion so that we can promulgate the best ideas that will actually make all of our lives collectively better. I don't care to see someone own someone else so for clicks. It's stupid. Is it intellectually, or not even, is it emotionally stimulating? Of course it is. Of course it is. It's fun to watch. It's fun to see the viral clip of Tucker Carlson just dunking on Ted Cruz. Of course it's fun to watch. Is it productive though? Is it getting us closer to solutions? I don't think so. So yeah, great comment, CJ Wolf. It's meant to get us angry. We all do it, by the way. We're all participating in both the problem and the solution. And someone sent me a really interesting book. One of my clients, because I'm a life coach. So one of my clients has been pushing for me to read a book by, I think it's Ian McGilchrist. And it's basically about the division between the left brain and the right brain. Really interesting. And it mentions basically that left brain thinking is very rigid. It's all about logic, but it misses context. And it can force people to get into combative mode rather than the right brain, which is more creative. It can understand nuance, understands context. It can see beyond the thing that you're talking about and look at the bigger picture. Yeah, I think we're being stimulated, all of us, and we're stimulating each other to get locked into left brain approaches to discussions where it's all about winning rather than about creating and constructing. It's really sad and it's really exhausting. And it's sad because, like, even when I point that out, it's like, oh, you're just being soft and take emotions out of it. No. The same people telling me to take emotions out of it are being emotional toward it. And by the way, there's a difference between being emotional and being emotionally intelligent. I'm not very emotional when I talk about a lot of these topics because it's like, look, I'm not Iranian. No, I actually know people. Two of my friends, they have parents in Iran right now. It's actually emotional for them. Me, it matters to me as an American, but it's like several steps removed. It's too abstract for to be emotional. There's a difference between being emotional and having emotional intelligence. There's a difference between being emotional yourself and considering the emotions of other people. Someone who's emotionally intelligent considers the emotions of other people and recognizes that humans are not strictly rational. Okay, we have a prefrontal cortex that's attached to a limbic system. We are very much emotional beings. So a leader, someone who operates with grace and emotional intelligence, understands that other people can be emotionally reactive and they don't do things that are unnecessarily provocative as a result. So that's the difference between being emotional and being emotionally intelligent. And I would just like to see people be more emotionally intelligent, especially people on the same team, because we're all trying to get the same thing done here, which is keep America safe, prosperous, and dominant. So we don't need to be playing gotcha games. That was a little bit of a tangent, but I hope you guys got it. Let's keep going with the clip.
I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
you believe
Israel.
That's what God was talking about
Yes.
in Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is.
Okay. I will say, I just like Tucker, man. Like I watch his podcast. I know some people don't like him. I like him because the guy is just real. He's just really real and honest. And even though I think here he's a bit condescending, he's kind of playing gotcha games. I think he had a real point here, which is, yeah, some of our senators and elected leaders' allegiance to Israel is weird. It's just weird. And actually, in this clip, I think Tucker got to the bottom of it. You know, some people say, oh, well, they're our ally and we got to support our ally. Yeah, well, guess what? Germany's our ally. France is our ally. I don't see senators going out on social media unprompted saying, I stand with Germany, I stand with France. Ted Cruz literally put out a post after this podcast dropped saying, upon entering the Senate, I made a commitment to be the #1 defender of Israel. Why? Why is that an essential part of your platform as a senator from Texas? Why is an elected leader from a state in our country declaring as a part of his platform his allegiance to defending Israel? And I think Tucker got to the bottom of it. It's religious for him. It's religious. And that's what people have been sensing. It doesn't make it bad. Just to be clear, it's okay if people have their religious proclivities. But that's what's driving a lot of our policy decisions for some of these people. And it's not even just about separation of church and state. Like, look, if you as a Christian just believe in defending Israel, I want to make sure you're super transparent about that so that your voters know what they're getting from you. And maybe he was transparent about that during his Texan Senate state election race. I don't know. I hope he was. Because that's not a rational commitment. That's a religious commitment. And I don't have any issue with your religion. But when you're mixing your religion with governance and it's not transparent, it becomes scary to other people who do not have that same religious commitment. That's the first thing. Now let's talk about the religious commitment itself, because Tucker made a really important point. If you're going to say that as a Christian politician, you are committed to Israel, it's important that you're precise about what that means. Does committing to Israel mean committing to defending everything that their government does? Because Netanyahu is tremendously unpopular with a lot of Israeli citizens right now. I don't actually have this stat. I had to cite it in a video. I actually made a video when Kanye started spewing all the foul stuff that he was spewing. And I made a video talking about, okay, this is what Kanye is doing. This is how it's harmful. This is where it's coming from. Here's how we need to deal with anti-Semitism. Here's how we need to not. So if you're interested in that, go check out my YouTube. But I did some research, and I'm pretty sure a minority of Israeli citizens supported Netanyahu's leadership. It's not even clear that if there was an election held today, that Netanyahu would be reelected. So again, when you say you're defending Israel, what does that mean? When you say I will be the #1 defender of Israel in the Senate, besides that being, in my mind, not something that's necessary at all from an elected leader, but regardless, what does that actually mean? Now, it's one thing if he said, I will defend the Israeli government to the extent that their interests align with the American government's or America's interests. It's another thing. It would be another thing if he said, I commit to supporting the Israeli people no matter what, as a Christian. It's another thing. But you're just saying Israel. What does that mean? Netanyahu? Are you going to defend Netanyahu no matter what? That's scary to me. And I think Tucker actually cut to the heart of it. Beneath all of the fighting and all the back and forth, I actually think this was the core of the concern. Hey, are you here to serve America first or Israel first? Because America's not in the Bible. Israel is. And if your commitment to your faith comes before your commitment to your country, the American people deserve to know that. Because now we're not talking about defending Israel because Israel's interests are aligned with America. No, we're talking about defending Israel because it aligns with your interpretation of the Bible. So I think this is a really important podcast. Really recommend that you guys look at it and watch it even without judgment, without a strongly held belief about should we go to war with Iran? Should we stop them from getting nukes? Or like Ted Cruz, whether he's a good dude, bad dude, Tucker Carlson, whether he's a good dude, bad dude, like go beyond all of that and treat this as an insight into how some of our elected leaders think and decide for yourself, are you okay with that? Personally, I'm not. I'm not, because I don't even know what defending Israel actually means to Ted Cruz. I got to watch the rest of the interview. Maybe he clarifies. But if it's defending the Israeli government, no, I'm not down with that. I'm not down with that. They're our ally, but the thing with allies is they are partially aligned with your interests. They are never fully aligned with your interests. So even if we're 80% aligned with Israel, there's still things that Israel's going to do to defend itself that are not necessarily in the best interest of America, including preemptively striking Iran before potentially we're ready, which might have been what happened. And that's scary. It's scary to think that an ally who is partially aligned with our interests put ourselves in a situation where our hand was forced and now we have to fight. That's really scary as an American taxpayer. And I think that's the heart of the concern. So hopefully you guys understood it. Well, not even understood it. Well, that was a weird thing to say. I think you guys understood it. You guys can keep up, right? You guys are sharp. Hopefully that was helpful. And look, a lot of the time, you guys watch me. You know, I know I've been more critical of Trump recently with his approach on immigration. Some people didn't like that. I lost some followers. That's okay. I don't want you coming here because you think I'm going to say things you agree with. Please. If you're coming here because I say what's on your mind, I don't think that's as useful to you as you coming here because I say what I think people need to think about. That's the best service I think I could provide right now. Not to be a mouthpiece for MAGA or for Trump or to defend our leaders. Like, I think having loyalty to leaders is weird. I think leaders should have loyalty to us. I'm here to try to elevate the discourse. I'm here to introduce you to thoughts that you might not have considered. I'm here to invite you into thinking through why you believe what you believe and help you just think for yourself. And I'm trying to think for myself. And if we all think for ourselves and we can understand why other people think the things that they do, I think we can get to a much better America and a much better future. So thanks. This was a fun stream. I'm going to get to the comments before we go. And yeah, one more plug. If you're interested in hearing more of my long form thoughts and you like to read written thoughts as well, you should join my mailing list. It's at thatskaizen.substack.com. I'm going to plug that one more time. I'm going to post a link in the chat as well. That'll go to some of you platforms. I think it goes to the YouTube chat. I don't think it goes to X, but I'm not sure. And another plug, if you just like my outlook on life and you would love some help in your life, getting to the next level of your life, whether it's clarifying your communication or clarifying your thinking, or you feel stuck or you feel purposeless and you've already had some success, but now it's time for the next level of success. I'm also a life coach. I support people in going through powerful transformations and helping people get clear and courageous in whatever is blocking them in their life. So if you're interested in that, you can also go to my website. It's thatskaizen.com and you can apply to work with me. And yeah, maybe one of you, I will help you in changing your life. So I get to change lives for a living. That's the other thing I do on the side. So not even on the side. That's actually my main source of income right now. But this will probably be the last year that I'm doing it because I'm trying to transition from life coaching to thought leadership. So again, if you're interested, you can go to thatskaizen.com. Okay, let's check the chat. Then we'll be out of here because it's really hot in the studio right now. AC Ballin says, also more generally, a lot of people can't articulate what they mean concretely, but they can communicate their worldview abstractly. Yeah. So let's have compassion for that. Like, look, we should absolutely hold our leaders to a higher standard. And like, we should encourage them to really have, I don't need my leaders to have the trivia like on command. Like, you don't need to memorize trivia. It sounds nice, but look, we all have phones. Like, what if Ted Cruz could have just been like, I don't know, let me just check ChatGPT right now. That would actually be really funny to me because like that's actually how people operate. It's like, I don't expect you to have every fact in your head. But I do expect you to have your positions thought out on things that you advocate for. So if you're going to advocate for regime change in Iran, especially if you're advocating for military intervention, you better come correct as a senator. Real important. And to Ted Cruz's credit, I think he actually did. I think he made a compelling case for why we need to invade, or maybe not invade, but we need, I'll say this. He made a compelling case for why we need to intervene in Iran. He did not make a compelling case for why we need to instate regime change in Iran. And by the way, in 1953, we did instate regime change in Iran, and it led to the overthrow of a democratically elected representative. There was replaced with a Shah, and then that Shah got overthrown by Ayatollah Khamenei. And now we're dealing with this whole nuclear situation. So we do not have a good track record of regime change. I don't think regime change is the right thing to aim for. I do think crippling Iran's nuclear capability is the right thing to aim for. So I think Ted Cruz made a good case for why we need to intervene. I don't think he made a good case for why we need to change regimes, or the case that we even have a good understanding of how to do proper regime change. I don't want us to do regime change. We tried that in Iraq. It went horribly. We tried that in Afghanistan, it went horribly. Now we have ISIS. Al-Qaeda is still in power. Iraq is not better off. Taliban's back in power. Let's not aim for regime change. Do I have sympathy for the Iranian people who have been suffering under the Islamic Republic? I do. And I hope they get the liberation that they need. And I hope that they get a government that's more representative of them. That should not be the reason that we intervene in Iran. It should not be the reason. In fact, we need to stop even talking about it as the reason, because it confuses us and it allows us, it's like we start feeding on our own self-righteousness. Oh, we just got to go liberate these people. Yeah, we do not have a good track record of doing that. So if our interests happen to align with that of the Iranian people in opposing the Islamic Republic, great. That's like a happy coincidence. We should not be aiming for Islamic Republic's downfall to free the Iranian people. It's not our job. It's not our job. There are many countries in the world that have oppressive regimes. There are many countries in the world that don't have a regime that's as oppressive as the Islamic Republic, but are persecuting religious or ethnic minorities, like China and what they're doing to the Uyghur Muslims. It's not our job to intervene for the sake of a regime change. And if to avoid nukes being installed ever again, we need to instantiate a regime change, I'm open to it. I'm really skeptical of our capability of doing that. I would like to have the objective be more narrowly defined at just stop Iran from getting a nuke. Like, what's the minimally effective way to stop Iran from getting a nuke that doesn't necessitate boots on the ground and all this other stuff? But please, the whole regime change in Iran thing is a massive red herring. It sounds exactly like bringing democracy to the Middle East. I don't want to ever hear that again. And I say that having sympathy for my Iranian friends, again, from just a human perspective and from my heart. Yes, I want them to have a government that serves their people, but it's not our job to do that. Okay, let's read the remainder of the comments in the chat, and then I'm going to log off. It's funny. Sometimes I'm like, damn, I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk for an hour. And then an hour and a half later, here we are. God Bless America says, yes, discussions. Yes, we do need to have discussions instead of making everything a win-lose. It's so silly. So silly. Angel Silver says, I'm coming here for clarification and understanding. That's what's most important to me at this point. Thank you. I'm glad that you're here for that. I think that's more useful than validation. Yeah, Leighton Stone Blue says, I find it super interesting the type of Christianity you're taught in the US to the UK compared to the UK. We as Christians do not have this obligation to support all things Israel out of some religious connection. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not well versed on this stuff. I went to Catholic school, but I'm not like a practicing Christian. I pray to Jesus. I don't go to church. I don't really read the Bible. I think Jesus was super wise, so I resonate with Jesus, and I find comfort in praying. But yeah, this stuff about we need to support Israel, like I didn't even encounter that growing up. And I don't know if Ted Cruz's interpretation is correct, but given that the Bible was written nigh on 2,000 years ago, well before the modern state of Israel was established, which is a political entity, not just Israel sometimes refers to the people, sometimes it refers to the political entity. Yeah, I would be very careful to justify defending the actions of the Israeli government because it says in the Bible that we need to support the nation of Israel. We need to be very precise with what these things mean. Stellar Echo says, I love your work, Kaizen. Keep it up. Thank you. Appreciate that. Stellar Echo pointed out regime change worked in Japan. I don't know if calling it regime change would be fair. They certainly changed a lot about the nature of their government. But my understanding is that after we dropped the second bomb, the king of Japan, or emperor of Japan rather, surrendered. And this was not like, so we like went in and toppled the government, which is what I think people generally are thinking when they think regime change. There's a difference between like using our soft influence to influence local politics, which we've done before, and going in and like decapitating the heads of state and like killing the leaders, and basically what we did in the Middle East. So I think generally, colloquially, when people say regime change, they're more thinking of the Middle East. But yeah, we have influenced other governments to be more friendly to us, and Japan is a good example of a successful case of that. What do you think should happen after U.S.-Israel disarms Iran's nuclear capability? Great question. See, Alan, that's a good second-order thinking question. I don't know. I'm speculating. Let me develop some thoughts live. Don't hold me to these. I'm just speculating now. You know, my hope would be we use the minimum effective dose of intervention. To me, the minimum effective dose of intervention is we take out Iran's nuclear capability. Now, whether there's spontaneous regime change because after taking out Iran's nuclear capabilities, the people of Iran rise up and they install a new democratic state, or you know, the Islamic Republic just replaces their current cadre of leaders with a new cadre of leaders. I don't know what's going to happen, and I think we need to be willing to deal with either of them, because even if they just replace the Islamic Republic V1 with Islamic Republic V2, well, now we've established that, hey, if you guys go for nukes, we will intervene. So that changes the stakes of the negotiation. And my hope would be that in that environment where we've proven we're not bluffing, we can actually get them to allow IAEA inspections. They can be transparent about their nuclear energy program, so we can make sure it doesn't get weaponized, so we don't have to do this again. But no, I do not think the goal should be regime change in Iran. I think the goal should be a denuclearized Iran. So great question, Alan. Jods made a comment about Ted Cruz and Canada. He said she says he's Canadian. I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know much about Ted Cruz. Actually, we're at the same party once, funnily enough. When I went to the inauguration, I went to a party and he just showed up and all these like cameras. I'm like, who is that? I was like, oh, I think I've seen that guy. I actually don't know much about Ted Cruz, so I don't really have an opinion on him. He seemed authentic in this interview, the part of it that I watched. So yeah, I don't really have further comments besides that. Yeah, Val says Kaizen's right about Japan. We don't think of it as a regime change, more like a huge slap in the face Japan needed, and our country is grateful for what U.S. did for us post-war. Oh, and the country is grateful for what the U.S. did for us post-war. Are you Japanese? Interesting. Seeing us despite the nuclear bomb. Yeah, I think that's like one of the best examples of de-radicalizing a country. Regime change, I guess you could call it that, but I think a more precise term would be de-radicalizing. And yeah, we helped de-radicalize Germany. We helped de-radicalize Japan. I'm open to a world where we de-radicalize Iran, but we should not be forcing a regime change that is not driven by the people, because oftentimes you replace one devil with an even greater one. And we have a history of that in the Middle East. Okay. Everyone, thank you for coming. This is a fun stream. This is my longest one in a minute. We went 90 minutes just ripping. If you guys want to watch a replay of it, it's going to be on X, or you can go to my YouTube channel. Just search That's Kaizen on YouTube. If you go to the live tab, you can always catch the streams. Yeah, you know, I'm going to be straight up with you guys. You know, I took down in a moment of insecurity, I took down the recording from the last stream because I said, maybe we should allow Iran to have a nuke. And then I thought about it. I was like, no, that's foolish. We can't allow these people to have a nuke. So look, I'm always in the process of updating my views and countering my views, and I try to remain unattached to what I said yesterday. And maybe there's some things I said today that I'm going to disagree with in the future. And I want to encourage all of you guys to do the same, because as you get new information, it's okay to arrive at new conclusions. As you think deeper about things, it's okay to change your perspective. And I think we need to allow a world where people are able to genuinely arrive at new conclusions, rather than calling people flip-flopper, which implies some sort of disingenuousness or dishonesty. It's like, no, sometimes issues are just complicated and we need time to think about it. We need data to think about it. And we're actually thinking about it rather than attaching our ego to the first thing that we said. So I just wanted to acknowledge, I took down the replay. Maybe I'll put it back up though. Sometimes, honestly, I think about myself and I'm like, well, if I run for like president one day, someone's going to take a clip from my stream and then I look like an idiot. And as I talk about it, I'm like, yeah, it'll probably happen. And that just comes with the territory, right? So why bother taking stuff down? So I don't know. I'll probably put it back up. People seem to find it valuable. So we'll see. All right. See you guys Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific for another live stream. Let's hope that things come to a peaceful resolution by then. Until then, remember, it's just as important how you talk than what you're talking about. Let's try not to be angry. Let's try not to constantly be looking for takedowns. Let's recognize that, hey, especially if you're watching this stream right now, we're all the same team. And not even just Team America, Team Humanity. So let's try to do this thing in a way that feels as good as it can to everyone. Peace.